It used to be that Itsuki was just a regular kid. Then one day, everything changed when monsters suddenly attacked the Earth. Those monsters watched, left all alone in this world. He vowed to hunt down and kill every single monster. 10 years passed until the day he could finally wake up his power and become a hunter. He walked onto the stage under the gaze of the world's greatest hunters and placed his hand on the awakening stone. But he had no idea what fate had in store for him. He unlocked a mysterious power called the Limit Breaker, a strength that no one in the world had ever known. On top of that, he found out his level was stuck at 0, which meant he could never grow stronger. Now, the big question is, how will our hero get revenge on the monsters who killed his parents? It all started with the memory of that day, when countless spooky black monuments rained down from the sky, dropping one by one through the clouds to cast dark shadows over the city while strange glowing spheres and crackling lightning swirled around them as they fell. And a huge purple beam shot straight up from the city center, spinning the sky like a giant whirlpool while everyone on the street stopped to stare at the glowing tower rising before them. Monsters known as disaster beasts smashed through the barriers and stormed into the human world, where a giant dark figure named Ringa appeared, the demon of destruction, with purple energy swirling behind him. Soon, the streets were swarmed by so many scary monsters that it looked like a flood. Big monsters with armor, wings, and giant claws charged forward while people screamed and ran away. A giant armored monster swung its arm, knocking a man backward as he screamed for everyone to run away. Close by, his little one screamed and lunged toward his father while his mother sprinted away as the world went crazy around them. As we looked across the streets, monsters attacked from every side with a winged creature diving from the sky, a burrowing beast bursting from the ground, and blue-flamed monsters charging at the fleeing people while bodies piled up on the road and panic swallowed the whole area. The armored beast charged forward with blue flames exploding around it. Fire was wide open in a roar while blue light flashed in its eyes. A swirling blast of blue fire hurled toward a terrified woman clutching a child to her chest as she ran, spreading across the road while the monsters closed in. Caught by blue flames, the woman threw her child forward while the boy lay weak on the ground, and as she trembled and told him to run to Suki, he looked at her with tearful eyes and cried out for his mom. Just then, a shout of Suki's name cut his name again, and a drop of sweat slid down a boy's face as the voice echoed. The moment passed, and the girl with pink hair turned around to see him spacing out, so he quietly told her nothing was wrong while standing in line with the other students. She narrowed her eyes and leaned closer, asking once more if he was really saying that. Then, tears streaming down just one eye, the boy who was that same Itsuki stood frozen in place while he cried. Before he could reply, another student grabbed his shoulder and said, "He's probably just sleepy since he usually sleeps this time." But then a surprise school assembly began, and Itsuki pointed out that the teacher on stage was dressed strangely. On the stage, a teacher wearing a strange armored helmet told the crowd how some humans gained the power to fight the disaster beasts and became known as Awakened. Itsuki's classmate leaned in and pointed at the man on stage, explaining that he was Ninto, the commander of the northern continent, and asked how Itsuki could be from there and not know him. Itsuki stared quietly at Izumi Ninto, noting how the name sounded familiar, and admitting he had once pictured a hunched old man with a long beard, only to find the person on stage looked far stranger than he imagined. Itsuki's friend shouted with pure excitement that this man was the strongest Awakened, going so far to say that even Teiwane, the very light of the armored man stepped back into view and shared the latest who hadn't awakened, yet normal people who hadn't simply by touching a monument. Simply by touching a monument. Izumi Ninto stood tall on stage, his long cloak billowing around him like black fire, come to help them wake up their power and fight the disaster beasts. Right as he spoke, glowing blue blades sliced through the stage and the monument exploded, sending light and pieces flying while a guard in sunglasses watched from nearby. Seeing this, the students erupted in loud excitement as a monument burst from the ground, sparking shock and disbelief that what they were witnessing was truly magic, while others screamed that now was not the time for surprise, gripping their fists tight and muttering that it felt like a dream they were desperate to wake up from. Proud, Itsuki's friend suddenly grabbed his arm, his eyes sparkling with excitement as he whispered that they had finally found a way to awaken. But Itsuki walked right past her, his eyes flashing red as a streak of light shot through the air, leaving the girl staring in shock. The camera zoomed in on Itsuki's face, his red glowing eyes shining with wild excitement as he shouted that the big day had finally arrived. On stage, a student reached out to touch the big black monument, but nothing happened, so a guard shouted that it wasn't working and called the next person forward. The students watching looked nervous as a boy pointed out that a past student had broken the school record in their first year, warning that if someone that talented couldn't wake up, then surely he couldn't either, but the girl beside him argued that sports skill wasn't the same thing and told him not to give up yet. More students stepped forward to touch the monument while the guard kept repeating the same word. And as the line moved forward, the anxious crowd grew tighter until a white-haired boy nervously pointed out that no one had woken up yet, while others whispered in fear, and a short-haired girl insisted it would be easy even as the boy beside her trembled, worrying their whole school might be wiped out. Shouted the next name out loud. While students nearby hushed their worries, fearing the awakened bully would bring trouble, a boy suddenly shouted and pointed at the monument. Suddenly, lightning exploded from the monument and threw everyone back into the air with crackling blue sparks that made everyone stop and stare. A glowing blue screen popped up next to him showing his stats while he grinned, thinking that both Izumi Ninto and the woman beside him would finally recognize him, only for the blue-haired woman to softly tell her father that this boy was special because his rare level 0 status had an impossible 12 points instead of the usual 5, and though his dad stayed calm, the girl agreed it was still better than nothing. Even though her father, the schoolyard fell quiet as Oishi Hikaru threw his arms up in victory. Smiling brightly sparkled around him, and he wondered if the old man Ninto had anything to say to the first awakened student. But before he could brag anymore, someone grabbed his shoulder from behind, and he spun around in shock to see his ski stepping right past him. Oishi Hikaru spun around to Itsuki in a rage, screaming that his dirty hands had no business touching him and asking if he wanted to die. The students huddled in whispers, with one girl asking who the boy was, another noting he'd cut the line and named him Tenma Itsuki from Class 5, while a third muttered that once Oishi picked someone, it was all over. From above, the blue-haired woman and Commander Ninto watched silently, but she squinted and whispered that she felt a huge wave of emotion radiating from that student. Standing before the giant stone monument, Itsuki pressed his hand against the cold surface as his eyes turned red and his flooded him, forcing him to whisper that he would never forget his hatred for the disaster beasts because he had burned that day into his mind. Commander Ninto stared ahead, feeling like something totally unbelievable was about to happen. Out on the awakening platform, a huge blue figure of light rose up behind Itsuki, holding a sword and shining with power, while Itsuki stood calm beneath it. As blue light filled the air, the monument burst with energy and a sharp, glowing shape rose above Itsuki, wrapped in swirling streams of light. Light spread out across the whole area like a giant lotus blooming in the sky, and everyone below watched as the school grounds got wrapped in a glowing dome. The students gazed up in silence as one boy pointed out that the beam of light stretched hundreds of meters into the sky, while another shouted that it was far more amazing than Oishi's awakening. Two of Itsuki's classmates cheered and smiled, shouting that his performance was exactly what they hoped for. Blue-haired officer stared up at the sky in shock as she whispered that this rare sight only happened when an order breaker was born, her hand over her mouth in disbelief, while even Commander Ninto grinned, eager to see just how capable the new student would be. Light. Itsuki blinked in confusion as he looked around at the blue energy soaring blue light, wondering if he had finally awakened. He looked around to find himself sitting cross-legged in the middle of a huge, glowing lotus made of light, surrounded by petals floating in a quiet, strange space. Suddenly, a blue screen popped up, and Itsuki stared at it in shock as it showed his stats. A fixed human at level 0 with a special grade, Gift Nirvana, which could heal any injury and remove all negative effects. Suddenly, another blue window popped up, revealing that my missus was rank and could learn counter moves from enemy attacks, followed by a screen showing Itsuki's terrifying stats. Attack 0, Agility 0, Defense 0, Magic 0, and a total of 0. Itsuki turned pale and dropped his jaw in shock as two blue windows popped up, announcing that he had gained the Z-rank skill Mimesis, unlocked the special gift Nirvana, and boosted all his stats by 200. Another screen showed the stats jumping from 0 to 200 for attack, agility, and defense. As soon as he saw that, Itsuki's face lit up with joy, and he realized that even though he couldn't level up like everyone else, the glowing screen showed him a special way to get stronger whenever he learned new tricks. He tightened his fist and smiled with confidence, admitting he couldn't judge the power's strength, but knowing for sure he had awakened, and with fire in his eyes, he vowed to wipe out the disaster beasts. By students to cover their faces and cry out in pain from the blinding glare. Amidst the blinding light, Itsuki stood tall in the monument's glow as lightning and energy swirled powerfully around him. Oishi stared at what he saw, shaking so hard he couldn't believe it, his face contorted in a scream that this thing couldn't be real. The blue-haired officer gasped, covering her mouth in shock as she stared at the glowing monitor, whispering that those stats were impossible for a rookie with awakened powers. Even Commander Ninto couldn't quite believe it, but he had to admit that Itsuki was undeniably one of the most powerful new talents ever seen. Outside, Itsuki emerged from the glow with swirling blue energy petals dancing around him, his powerful silhouette shining as Commander Ninto, the strongest of all, held his breath with only one word left to say. A level 0 order breaker with no special job or skills listed had balanced stats of 200 in attack, agility, defense, and magic for a total of 800. As students and teachers cheered wildly in the crowd, someone shouted that 10 MMA stats had skyrocketed in a blink, while one person couldn't believe their ears and an older teacher declared that this moment would be written into school history. Among the cheering crowd, Oishi shook with angry rage as lightning danced around him and his eyes burned red. His teeth gritted in fury as he glared at Itsuki, seething that the tears he thought were his had been stolen away. Oishi's anger erupted into a storm of electricity that raced over his skin as he screamed that a nobody like Itsuki should stay one, while the students scrambled back in fear as the air crackled with sparks and their faces twisted in shock. A flash of electricity lit up the whole hall as Aishi stepped forward, eyes wild with rage, and shouted that he was going to wipe out Itsuki with his brand new power. Perched high above the noisy crowd, Itsuki stood still and calm on top of the monument, watching lightning flash wildly all around and below. As Itsuki's fist tightened, a blue window popped up announcing the Silver Serpent skill, and his serpent then saw his eyes sharpen as panels raced past 27, 57, and 69%, while lightning crackled around him. Just as Itsuki struck, he vanished in a flash of lightning, and the floor split open where the thunder crashed down. The students gasped as they realized something was wrong, with one asking where Itsuki had gone, another mentioning a flash of electricity that made him vanish, and Oishi looking around confused. A blinding blue light filled the window as Itsuki materialized behind Oishi like a shadow caught in lightning, and the terrified boy froze in panic, sweat pouring down his face as he realized the glowing beam was coming straight at him. Itsuki placed a cold hand on Oishi's shoulder and told him to be lucky for being human, adding that if Oishi were a beast, he'd have killed him 100 times over, leaving Oishi trembling with fear. Right after that, Itsuki took a lazy step forward just as Oishi hit the ground, sparking shocked gasps and nervous laughs from the crowd, while a floating screen above Itsuki's head surged from 94% to 99% with swirling blue energy as he noted the skill was probably so quick because it was only a low-level C rank. The screen went dead black with a sudden flash, then announced that the analysis was done. Lightning burst around him as a new message flashed, announcing his new crank skill, Thunderbreaker, while he stood in the center of crackling blue electricity, his body glowing as the fresh power wrapped around him like living sparks. The students watched nervously as the light glowed again, and while one boy stared in shock, another student adjusted his sunglasses with a grin, happy he had brought them along. Inside a glowing room, Itsuki sat quietly as he noticed that every time his analysis ended, he was pulled into this strange place, and now a new window told him the Silver Serpent was done and he had gained the Thunderbreaker skill. Another window popped open to reveal the Thunderbreaker Level 1 skill, which let him soak up lightning attacks to build up energy that could boost his speed by 50% when released, while also permanently raising his agility by 5% every time he absorbed a C-rank strike. All while his stats jumped by 10, his wounds vanished, and every negative effect washed away. Outside, the students covered their eyes as a huge flash of blue light erupted from Itsuki's body, wrapping him in swirling lightning, while the buzzing energy forced the crowd to step back and shield their faces. Someone yelled that Itsuki was now wrapped in lightning from head to toe, making another student panic because his spark was even brighter than Oishi's, while Oishi himself stared with trembling eyes, unable to believe how Itsuki had suddenly learned such a power. As Itsuki's body burned with bright light, the system watched his power soar, lifting every stat from 200 every way, boosting his total power from 800 to 840. Just then, the students looked up at the sky in confusion, unsure if it was rain since it had been sunny a moment ago, until one of them shouted that something was falling while another tried to catch the drops. A coffin-like shape wrapped in lightning crashed from the stormy clouds, making the rain pour harder onto the school grounds. A woman with blue hair and glasses gasped in shock, calling the sudden appearance a miracle, while Commander Ninto immediately canceled the school assembly and ordered everyone to run outside, realizing with certainty that he was the one they were looking for. The woman looked at Commander Ninto and said they needed to run away because fighting wasn't their thing. But Commander Ninto shook his head beside her, warning that running would only cause panic. So he pointed ahead and told her to look at the calm boy standing there. Just as lightning crackled around the falling object, the students fled in terror, leaving only Itsuki standing calm in the glowing blue center of the field. From behind, the blue-haired woman yelled at him, asking why he wasn't running. A huge black column smashed down from the sky, shaking the ground and showering debris as rain poured hard while a group of students panicked until one boy screamed that disaster beasts were coming and told Itsuki to run. But Itsuki stood his ground with glowing red eyes and coldly promised to wipe them all out. His friends stared in shock, with one screaming that he'd die if he didn't run, and another insisting he couldn't fight disaster beasts right after waking up. But Itsuki calmly shook his head and told them to trust him even as the pink-haired girl hesitated with worry on her face. Finally, she screamed that if he died, he wouldn't blame them, then grabbed the other guy's clothes and dragged the boy with glasses hesitated, worrying that letting the enemy go was a mistake since he was a walking disaster beast. As they ran away, Itsuki grinned wildly, his eyes burning bright red through the rain. He growled that his first target as an awakened being was Lucky, the one who took his parents, and as lightning sparked around him, he took a step forward. A glowing panel appeared beside him showing off the blue-flame skeleton soldier named 10369, a level 8 warrior with a special shield that doubled his defense but vanished if hit hard enough, and Itsuki, his red eyes glowing with power and a crackle of lightning on his arms, stood ready to test his new skill. In the next moment, he charged forward with electricity exploding around him, blue lightning trailing behind as he raced toward the flaming skeleton beast on the field until the two forces crashed together and scattered sparks through the rain. The skeletal monster lunged to punch, but Itsuki dodged, then unleashed a blast of electricity from his fist while screaming that he wouldn't let anyone else die. His punch hit the creature's chest, causing a sudden explosion of raw power. The hit threw the monster across the field and smashed into the school, right through the school, while the ground shook and debris flew everywhere. Students watching from afar stared in shock, with one admitting that Itsuki's power was too much to handle and that they didn't need to run anymore, while a girl stood stunned by how the impact had blasted the monster away in a single hit, and the blue-haired inspector gazed at the ruined wall, amazed that a rookie who had just awakened could send a level 8 disaster beast flying with only one blow. As heavy rain poured down, Commander Ninto watched from afar, realizing that while Itsuki's speed and power were far beyond his own, he still knew that a skeleton soldier could never be defeated because of its super strong armor and its terrible bone fire, which instantly burned anything to ash. Blue flames exploded across the field, rolling toward Itsuki like a wave while the students held their breath as the fire rushed forward. Itsuki's friends screamed in terror, calling out Itsuki's name. Oishi stepped forward with a crazy grin, screaming that the fool who didn't know his place would turn to ash. As glowing screens sprang up before Itsuki, a system warning flashed that the enemy was wielding bone fire, and the analysis zoomed past 1% at lightning speed. Strong inside the burning bone fire, watching data swirl around him as he noticed that the enemy's attacks made his analysis go faster. The blue-haired instructor's eyes went wide as she whispered that even a level 10 awakened hero would crumble instantly if hit directly. Blue flames kept eating away at the arena, while Itsuki stood in the middle with half his body gone and glowing like a skeleton, as the blue-haired instructor's voice boomed through the fire to say it would be a tragedy for a die before growing, and system windows hovering nearby showed 77% and 81%, while Itsuki looked at his burning form, muttered that it felt like being cooked, and softly admitted it must have hurt. As the flames danced around a fading memory, he saw his mother's face half burn away and realized that while it hurt so much, she still smiled in her final moments to stop scaring Itsuki. Commander Ninto stared out with a sharp look, wondering if Itsuki was holding back his true strength. The blue fire twisted wildly as the progress bar crept forward, and Itaki's bony hand squeezed tighter, vowing that once the analysis ended, the enemy was done for. The system window flashed as the analysis finished at 100%, while the students whispered in fear outside the flames. One doubted they had hoped too soon for the newly awakened rookie, only for another to admit his own foolishness, until someone suddenly shouted that the Blue Lotus had reappeared and Itsuki might work another miracle. Blue light swirled around Itsuki, who stood inside a fading ring of fire, wondering what skill he would gain as the flames died down to reveal his burned and cracked body. Suddenly, a system window popped up announcing that the bone fire analysis was done and a new skill called Blackwall was unlocked. More windows appear to explain the move. It uses magic to freeze your body, letting you block any fire attack weaker than B rank, and it also boosts your defense when you do. Suddenly, another message popped up announcing that he had claimed Blackwall Level 2, boosting all his stats by 20, wiping away every negative effect, and healing all his wounds completely. A fresh window flashed up, showing his stats had jumped from 210 to 230 in attack, agility, defense, and magic, pushing his total power to 820. Itsuki stared calmly at the glowing screen, recalling how his fiercest attack earlier had failed to crack the skeleton soldier's tough defense. But now, with this new boost, he felt sure he could finally break through. Suddenly, blue lotus petals sprang open around him, blooming into a giant flower of pure light. Itsuki stood right in the middle, glowing with bright power all around him. The students watching gasped in shock. Then one cried out in relief that he was alive, while others cheered loudly, convinced he would succeed, and someone even pointed out that such a full recovery was practically a miracle. The blue-haired instructor stared in shock, wondering if Itsuki possessed a healing power since she had seen him use lightning just moments ago, while Commander Ninto felt the same disbelief, realizing that even among the most mysterious job titles known as order breakers, Itsuki seemed to be something truly unique. While standing in the center of glowing lotus petals with no injuries left on his body, Itsuki watched blue fragments swirl around him as he whispered in awe that he was perfectly healed and wondered if he could survive, even losing his limbs or brain, eager to find out just how far his healing power could go. Suddenly, the skeleton soldier roared, its armor glowing with blue bone fire as it charged forward in a violent burst of flame. Calmly turned and black spikes erupted over his skin. The rushing blue flames flew straight at him. His whole body burned up in the flames, yet he stayed perfectly still until his shadow finally showed up again through the fire. Thick layers of black spikes covered him from head to toe, while his red eyes glowed coldly from behind the cracked ice armor. Itsuki shot upward and crashed down with a loud boom of blue fire, his armored body crackling with electricity as he prepared to strike again. The skeletal monster swung its attack, but Itsuki vanished and reappeared right behind it before anyone could even blink. Itsuki lifted his arm, and it transformed into a huge black spike sword crackling with lightning. Itsuki moved so fast that with one monster in half with one sharp swipe of his blade. Watching from a distance, the students were completely shocked as one whispered that Itsuki vanished behind the monster in a split second like he had teleported, while another insisted that only an awakened person could move that fast. Oishi was shocked that she couldn't see Itsuki move at all, comparing him to a pro instead of a rookie. As the dust cleared and the black spikes faded from his skin, Itsuki kicked the skeleton beast's head into pieces, stunned to discover that its armor could become any weapon he imagined, making it a perfect mix of defense and offense. All of a sudden, a voice called out his name. Itsuki spun around in shock as his friend lunged forward and squeezed him in a tight, happy hug, cry that he was so glad Itsuki had won after worrying all along. But Itsuki froze for a second before asking about Sia. Earlier with a face full of tears, but now she had vanished without a trace. Itsuki gazed at the bustling crowd, wondering where she was, and, as he scanned the distant students, confusion grew while he quietly feared she might be mad. Not far away, the blue-haired instructor Choa watched the fights end, looking serious as she said, it was hard to believe a boy could beat a skeleton soldier that even a level 10 awakened would struggle against. So Commander Ninto called her over to help clean up and told her to tell the principal he was taking Itsuki with him. While Itsuki's friend patted his hand and reassured him that Seiya wouldn't be mad about his win. Guessing she must have touched the monument just from fear of falling behind, Itsuki cast a small glance downward and quietly hoped that was true. Suddenly, a voice called out to him and asked if he was Tenma Itsuki. Itsuki turned to see Commander Ninto, his long cape flowing, standing before him in silent silence. From afar, the crowd started whispering, wondering if the famous Commander Ninto was about to make Itsuki his student or if he was just pretending, since Ninto had only ever accepted Teiwajin, humanity's strongest, Teiwajin, and doubted anything. Itsuki's buddy shuffled backward, shaking like a leaf. He quickly promised to go find Sai. Commander Ninto gazed down at Itsuki with a calm voice, telling him that he was truly special. Itsuki gazed at Commander Ninto, whispering his question to find out what he meant by calling him special. Commander Ninto watched Itsuki closely and noticed dark energy gathering around him, telling him that his heart was full of anger and hatred, while Itsuki stood in the shadows with a bright light shining across his eyes. Commander Ninto stepped up and asked what caused such that hatred existed. Itsuki finally spoke, sharing how his parents died 10 years ago, saving him from dangerous monsters. He remembered nearly dying until an awakened hero appeared at the last second to save him, and struck the beast right before the terrified Itsuki. Itsuki whispered to Commander Ninto that he watched his mother die right in front of him as a glowing blue fire turned her body to ash. And even as her face melted away, she smiled at him one last time and told him he had to walk the rest of the way alone. Young Itsuki stared at her with shaking eyes, confused, and his voice broke as he screamed for his mother. As he stared at the beast, tears streaming down his face while he screamed in denial that the monsters who killed his parents were just like this thing. Before him, a giant monster burst from the dark, wreathed in burning purple fire, casting a dark shadow over Itsuki as he realized it was the source of all the evil. His eyes turned red, and in his heart he swore to kill that demon and every creature of its kind. As he screamed that he would wipe out every last one of them. Commander Ninto watched him and said that even with a heart full of hate, Itsuki was still crying. Itsuji raised his hand to his face and explained that since he saw his mother die, his left eye had stopped shedding tears while his right one wept uncontrollably. That kept his hatred for the disaster beast fresh in his mind. Commander Ninto asked Itsuki to be his student, promising to get him into the Salvation League so he could grow strong enough to take revenge on the beastly disasters that destroyed everything. Commander Ninto explained that to fight the disaster beasts better, leaders from 5 continents brought together the strongest awakened people from everywhere to form a special group called the Saviors. He kept explaining that Saviors got special training, powerful weapons, and huge pay, so much that even the trainees earning enough gold each month to buy a car, which made Itsuki gasp in shock. Commander Ninto then warned that such generous treatment wasn't free, for Saviors had to constantly fight disaster beasts on the front lines to keep people safe. Standing bare-chested with a calm look, Itsuki said he didn't care for money or special gear, because what truly mattered to him was something else. His eyes burned with determination. His fist tightened as he vowed that the true test was facing disaster beasts on the front lines, and with unshakable resolve, he declared that he would become a savior too. Commander Ninto explained the process, telling us that every February the Salvation League holds a massive tournament with over 10,000 fighters who score points, but only the top 100 earn the title of savior, which made Itsuki curious about the highest score anyone has ever achieved. Commander Ninto warned Itsuki that the note wouldn't help much. He calmly said the record was 115,000 points set by Taewajin 11 years ago, noting that you only need 30% of that to pass, but at least 50% to take first place. Itsuki quietly thought of Taewa Jinin, the legendary light of humanity that Rikaru had told him about. Commander Ninto told Itsuki that Jin was special and that comparing himself to her would only bring despair, but Itsuki should still have confidence because he believed he could one day stand shoulder to shoulder with her. Standing bare-chested on the training ground with a steady look in his eyes, Itsuki vowed to rise above Taewajin. When those words came through, Commander Ninto's eyes went wide right inside his helmet. Surprised by the memory of standing with Taewa Jin as he grew famous and inspired the next generation, he remembered how Taewa warned that simply copying him wouldn't defeat the disaster, promising instead that a new defeat the disaster beasts. For just as a new sunrise replaces the setting sun, someone would soon surpass him. A future Taewa Jin welcomed with hope. Commander Ninto saw Suki's strong spirit and realized the bright morning sunrise Taewa had been waiting for had finally shown up. A few hours later, Commander Ninto led Itsuki to a new place where a huge, glowing dome loomed in the distance, prompting Itsuki to whisper to himself about what it could possibly be. Commander Ninto explained that these monuments were the secret doorways linking our world to the realm of disaster beasts. He warned that even if the monsters are killed and the statues stay safe, more monsters will just show up to take their place. He pointed to the giant dome-shaped building and said it was built to hold monuments that couldn't be destroyed, where awakened people would go in to sweep out the disaster beasts that appeared, keeping things safe while they trained. Itsuki gazed at the towering building and wondered if it was a training ground, only for Commander Ninto to nod and confirm it was indeed a stage where the number and power of the beasts inside were too wild to ever control, making it a death trap. Commander Ninto warned Itsuki that the monsters in this stage were deadly, making it the toughest rookie challenge and earning it the nickname the Rookie Graveyard. He whispered to Itsuki that back in the day, when Jin was just a fresh rookie, he had conquered this deadly stage in just 3 minutes and 14 seconds. Commander Ninto looked at Itsuki and warned that he would only get 3 minutes to beat Jin if he really meant to do it. As Itsuki stepped toward the massive facility, Commander Ninto challenged him to clear the stage in just 3 minutes to earn his spot as a student, a promise that sharpened Itsuki's eyes with fierce determination to beat Jin and join the commander. As the crowd in the lobby turned to see a familiar face, someone shouted that Mr. Izumi had arrived, while another gasped at Suki walking beside him, whispering that no ordinary rookie could ever stand next to such a legend, unless he was a true powerhouse like Taewajin. Thinking about it, he walked toward the stage entrance, saw the display showing the disaster beast was let in, and wondered just how tough that really was since it was only 2 levels higher than the skeleton soldier he'd fought before. What surprised him most was that despite a crowd gathering nearby, no one dared to step onto the stage, as whispers of the rookie's dangerous overconfidence and a high-level guardian's presence filled the air, while others joked about his cocky charm and a lucky receptionist. Standing behind the counter, the receptionist smiled politely and asked if he was ready to step onto the stage and how many challengers he'd face, but he calmly said it would just be him, which made the whole room go quiet as she stared at him across the counter. Suddenly, she leaned forward and shouted angrily at him, scolding him for his bad jokes and warning him that the stage was dangerous, even if it looked fake, because people could get hurt or die there, while confused onlookers laughed behind them, thinking he just wanted to hit on her. But he calmly told the receptionist he had no interest in her at all and only wanted to challenge the stage, which made his expression darken as a shadow fell over his face, showing he didn't care about her. Contact info and only wanted to get in. To blame her if he died, nervously holding out a metal bracelet while clearly shaken, prompting Itsuki to mutter that she should have just said yes from the start instead of making him repeat himself. The crowd behind them whispered, calling Itsuki an idiot for challenging a level 10 stage as a rookie, while others doubted his special gift could matter without high enough levels. Yet he just checked his bracelet to scan and enter. A glowing screen floated above his hand, confirming that Tenma's awakening had granted Itsuki access. With a deep breath, Itsuki stretched his hands forward, knowing his promise to begin was just 3 minutes away. A bright digital timer popped up, glowing green with the number 01. Just as the gate swung wide, Itsuki exploded forward, his body wrapped in red energy with eyes that burned bright as he raced ahead. He scanned the huge open space, realizing the inside was far larger than he'd imagined, then sprinted across the grassy field toward a tall black tower, telling himself this was his first time stepping onto a stage, even a fake one, just as a creature suddenly rushed in and he shouted that it was coming. A wooden monster from the Kodama tribe leaped at him, and a blue window popped up to reveal it was Kodama number 1307, a level 4 beast with no special gift but solid stats, totaling 174 points. As he saw the danger coming, black spikes erupted on Itsuki's hand, and with a powerful downward slash, he unleashed a burst of energy that carved through his target. Itsuki calmly held his giant black axe hand, smiled, and joked that an axe is the perfect tool for trees before asking the other monsters how it felt to see their friend sliced in half. Then stood tall as dozens of Kodama charged him, calling them rotten trees. Outside, Choa talked to her father, Commander Ninto, asking why he sent a new recruit to this specific rookie stage instead of another, and Ninto replied that Itsuki claimed the newcomer would beat Jin, so he took him to the very same stage where Jin first stepped forward. Hearing that, Choa scowled and declared that no one could surpass Jin unless they stepped beyond what it means to be human, which made Commander Ninto ask if she truly believed Jin had already done that. Choa remembered meeting Jin for the first time, and thinking she was kind, his eyes changed the moment she instantly killed a level 97 disaster beast. She remembered those eyes so clearly, cold, lonely, and glowing with a power that felt far beyond any human, like the gaze of a god. Strong as the godlike Jin. Right now, he was just an unpolished stone and a hateful demon rather than savior. Meanwhile, on the battlefield, Itsuki stood among the fallen wooden beasts and said that his Over My Missus move wouldn't even activate against disaster beasts this strong. Suddenly, a dark figure with glowing red eyes stood behind him, and his own eye lit up just as the shadow loomed over him. In the next instant, his body flashed forward with incredible speed, slicing through the enemies in a single sharp motion. Itsuji stared down at the fallen beast with a calm face, wondering if that was really the end, or if level 10 monsters were actually this weak, because if they were, this place would never be known as the rookie graveyard. Right then, a blue window popped up before him, announcing that his B-rank self-regeneration skill had been detected and that overuse had already triggered. Another window popped up, showing that the analysis was only 5% done. This grabbed his attention, and his face changed. A level 10 disaster beast rose up behind him, its body twisting as glowing green eyes opened, while its vine-like limbs burst outward to lunge at him just as he braced himself in shock, realizing that despite having cut off half its head, it had already healed itself. As the towering monster regenerated, Itsuki narrowed his eyes and muttered that things wouldn't be easy, only for a glowing blue window to pop up and reveal the beast was a level 10 Kodama with a healing boost that had wiped out half its defense. Another blue window popped up to show the stats. Attack 110, Agility 100, Defense 60, Magic 180, with a total of 450. As the monster's wild vines lashed out, Itsuki clenched his fist and triggered a black shield of spikes to slice through them. Itsuki launched himself at the monster, dodging its blows while realizing it couldn't heal if he dealt damage fast enough. So he smashed forward with his armored arm, splitting through the Kodama's defenses in a glowing red blur that shook the very ground beneath him. Itsuki charged forward with his blade arm glowing blue, then shot up and crashed down like a falling spear, slicing the monster in half and lighting up the whole battlefield. The giant beast tore right down the middle, a bright crack running from its head to its chest, its golden eyes still glowing as its huge body started to break apart. With sharp red eyes and a wicked grin, Itsuki promised to mince the creature so thoroughly that it would never grow back. The next moment, he lifted both arms and unleashed a blinding slash of light that tore the giant monster in half, sending its wooden shell shattering into glowing fragments that scattered through the air before fading away. As the dust settled, Itsuki lowered his arm and breathed out. This should be enough, but he knew using that black wall had drained his magic, and before he could rest, the wooden vines twisted back together with glowing yellow eyes to rise and attack again. The glowing screen showed Itsuki had only 60% health left, yet he dodged the whirling wooden vines with quick, smooth moves while the battle raged on. He glanced back with an annoyed scowl, muttering that the monster just wouldn't die and was now getting really annoying, only to realize that every time it healed, it moved faster than before. His eyes tightened as he realized the analysis would finish faster if he kept going. So he chose to drop Blackwall to save his magic, and instead use Thunderbreaker to dodge attacks from a safe distance until his strategy clicked into place. But there was a problem. He was running out of time as the timer hit 75%, with lightning crackling along his arm. With determination hardening his face, he unleashed both Thunderbreaker and Blackwall to push his attack to the breaking point, forcing the monster to keep regenerating while his lightning-charged arm tore through its wooden body, driving him forward through the deadly storm as his power dwindled, and the odds against him climbed to 85%. He thought that if he died right now, all his hard work would mean nothing, so he charged lightning into his arm and fired off another huge blast. But just as he was about to strike the monster's head, his magic suddenly broke completely. With a final stagger, blood trickling from his lips, Itsuki sank to his knees as white steam rose from his battered wounds, whispering that his magic had finally run dry, only for a glowing window to pop up beside him, flashing that he still had 99% left. Seeing that, Itsuki's face hardened, blood trickling down his chin as his eyes glowed coldly, and with a strange smile, he declared that Over My Mess didn't need magic to activate, so the match was his win, right as the window in front of him finished its analysis at 100%. Another window showed the details. The Lotus Burst reached level 2, an active ability that uses magic to blast enemies within 5 meters with explosive force, getting stronger as you spend more magic, while its passive boost means that every time it defeats a creature of level 1 or higher, all your skill ranges grow by 1%. As the Lotus bloomed completely, Itsuki was bathed in a soft pink light that quickly knit his wounds back together. Another window popped open, showing that Lotus had leveled up to 2, gaining 20 stats, clearing all its bad effects, and fully healing its wounds, and add 20 points to all stats, just as the second one had done. Itsuki joined his hands together to get everyone's attention. Suddenly, a massive burst of power exploded into a roaring fire that swallowed everything, sending a wave of heat and a shadow of the monster through the thick smoke and flying sparks. When the fire died down, he stood there with blood streaming down his cheek and his hand still outstretched from the move he just made, took a deep breath, and said that the Lotus Burst wasn't bad. Smoke curled up from the scorched crater at Itsuki's feet as he realized that using just a third of his magic had wiped out weak disaster beasts so easily, even though he never expected Over My Misses to bring back magic that had already hit 0. As he moved forward, a glowing green crystal on the ground stopped him in his tracks, and he quietly wondered what it could be. Outside, the receptionist watched the red screen in panic as nearly 3 minutes passed without the rookie emerging, and when she saw the display read challenge and progress, with Tenma Itsuki still fighting, she urgently insisted they call the rescue team. Choa adjusted her glasses and calmly explained that while she doubted Itsuki could lose to the level 10 disaster beasts, she didn't believe he could clear the stage in just 3 minutes. But her words died in the air as a hush fell over everyone, only to be broken by a new message on the big screen announcing a new record, which froze the entire hall in shock as whispers spread and a woman whispered, "No way," while Choa stared at the green display in disbelief, asking out loud how Itsuki possibly did it. The most unbelievable part was that only barely ticked by, a bright notification flashed on the screen, declaring Tenma Itsuki a successful challenger who cleared the level 10 stage in just over 2 minutes, leaving the room stunned as the leaderboard showed him far ahead of the others while he stepped out covered in green liquid, sparking wild guesses about his survival and speed before he walked up to Izumi Ninto to finally accept his guidance as his teacher. Ninto beamed with pride, telling his student Itsuki he had done exactly as expected, while Choa stood nearby watching quietly, wondering if her father looked truly happy for the first time in a long while, even as the crowd whispered behind their hands, with some shouting in disbelief that Itsuki was Iamto's student, others bragging that he could break Tewajin's record, and a few arguing that no matter the truth about his teacher, his level would still have to rise if he wanted to grow. Just then, the nervous receptionist stepped up, clutching a fancy box as a reward for breaking the record and asking Itsuki to take it while apologizing for her earlier rude words. Itsuji's eyes went wide with shock as the box landed in his hands, reward for his wild stunt, but admitted that a rookie with no skills charging into danger was insane, yet the fact that she tried to stop him proved she actually cared about him. Hearing that, the receptionist turned bright red and stammered a denial, only for her to blush even harder after Itsuki politely thanked her. Not far off, Choa shouted to Itsuki that she was heading out and told him not to fall behind annoyance and warned him not to get cocky just because he was her father's student. So Itsuki quickly stood straight and agreed, which made Commander Ninto beside Choa remark that this level now seemed too easy for him and suggested raising the difficulty. As the three of them strolled now ready to face the toughest levels, Soto explained that a monster's power wasn't just about its level, but something far more important. He explained that the real difference came down to whether a creature had a brain like us, because those smart ones were far more dangerous than the mindless monsters that just followed their instincts. Choa kept talking, explaining that awakened beings and disaster beasts were actually the same kind of creature, except humans had jobs, which changed their stats depending on what species they were. She explained that the hardest levels are home to powerful, intelligent monsters, and since most of them in the northern continent are in North District 4, she told Itsuki that this is where he must go next before asking if he had any other questions. After listening to her, Itsuki quietly recalled the two mindless beasts he'd defeated earlier that had shown no fear or pain, making him wonder if Choa knew if smart disaster beasts felt hurt like them. Hearing that, Choa suddenly felt a chilling pressure behind her, and when she spun around to face it, her face went pale with fear, wondering what this scary feeling meant and what was going on in Itsuki's head. Behind them, a crowd gathered and whispered that Mr. Izumi might force Itsuki to face an advanced stage, sparking a heated debate about whether the hero could survive the deadly traps and the mysterious killer who ruled the North District. Another man began to speak disrespectfully, asking who Kinoshita Rei even was and suggesting he acted like a king. His friend quickly covered his mouth, hushing him in panic. He warned him that he would be killed too if that man hurt him. After all, he said that man was the son of the North District 4 Governor Kinoshita Rei. The room was fancy and filled with servants standing around a young man named Kinoshita Rei. Servants stood around him. A subordinate asked when he was leaving, so Kinoshita Rei smirked and answered that since he controlled every stage in North District 4, he would leave whenever he wanted, refusing to wait in line like a commoner while lifting his glass with a satisfied smile. In their past, Commander Ninto asked if he had ever seen a karma stone before. Conscious student, he should just go home quietly. Hearing that, Itsuki lowered his head slightly. He calmly said that he understood he would not be able to enter the stage unless he defeated this man. Beside him, Choa raised her hand, saying she would contact the North District 4 administrator because this kind of behavior could not be allowed. But Itsuki stopped her. His eyes glowed bright blue as he said it was not necessary. He repeated what his teacher had told him, that he should do what he believed was right without hesitation. He then turned to Choa again and spoke plainly. He said he would leave the treatment of the injured students to her. Then he turned to Tiru. As Itsuki stepped forward, a thought appeared in Tiru's mind. As he stared at him, he wondered who this man was. A status window floated beside Itsuki, showing his information. Tenma Itsuki, human level 0, fixed job, order breaker, gift, special grade, skill, undisclosed status, undisclosed. Seeing this, even though Itsuki was level 0, he stood firmly without any fear. Takaru wondered if Itsuki had a rare job that allowed him to stay calm like this. Teru suddenly felt something strange. Even with his higher level, he felt pressured. He told himself that rare job or not, he was 12 levels ahead. The stat difference should not be something Itsuki could bridge. Another window appeared beside Takaru, showing his status. Oga Takaru, human, level 12, job, elementalist, gift, grade 2. After metallization, defense plus 50% in stationary state. Skill, metallization. Status attack 110. Agility 100. Defense 250. Magic 145. Total 605. As Teru watched, his face changed. Takeru tried to block Itsuki's lightning-fast punch with his metal skin, but Itsuki saw through the trick and used his new clear orb skill to smash the tough defense apart before Takeru could even react. A bright lotus-like shape bloomed open to show a tiny black ball inside. A glowing orb drifted forward, scattering colors around it while the crowd watched in silence. Just a tiny ball, while another rolled his eyes and called it a huge disappointment. Teru glared at the glowing orb and laughed at the idea that such a tiny sphere could ever stop him or take away his power, calling the whole thing foolish. He stepped forward with confidence, wondering if that floating orb was Itsuki's ace up his sleeve. With a sneer, Takeru screamed that Itsuki was doomed to die, but his face froze and then went pale as the glowing ball sank into his metal side, leaving a tiny crack where they touched. A heartbeat later, the wound erupted with a burst of blood, and Teru screamed in agony as the clear orb sliced his arm apart in one clean, tearing line. He fell to the ground, holding his bleeding arm and screaming for help, while Itsuki calmly walked over to tell Takeru that he had warned him to dodge, explaining that since Takeru was human, he only aimed for his arm but would have gone for the neck if it were a monster. Itsuhi snapped his gaze to Takeru's frozen men, barked for them to stop staring, and ordered them to rush Teru to a hospital while glaring at them like he couldn't believe they weren't listening. As no one moved, he spun around with cold eyes and shouted sharply for them to get lost. Right away, guards dragged Takeru away, his blood-stained back dripping onto their uniforms as one looked shaken while the other wiped sweat from his face. From far away, the crowd started cheering as Choa beamed with pride while her classmates celebrated, with one student shouting that Itsuki won, another hailing him for a well-deserved victory, and a third adding that his win was perfect revenge for Teru, before two eager students immediately rushed up to offer him a spot in their trio to clear the mission fast or join them as a duo to earn more experience points. They argued again, wondering if he really planned to take on the three disaster beasts at the Flaming Rock, creatures as tough as Takeru, but one of them promised that their healer could keep his magic full so he could fire his orbs without stopping. Itsuki stared forward with a calm face, knowing that beasts as tough as Takeru were the perfect targets to boost the clear orb speed for that stage. The two boys leaned in with excitement, eager to hear which team Itsuki had picked. Itsuki looked down and whispered that he'd be going alone. Everyone around him froze in shock, with one person gasping that he was facing a powerful level 15 alone, while another scolded him for getting too confident just because he had beaten Takeru. Those two students walked away, with one admitting Itsuki was powerful but warning against arrogance, while the other said they couldn't meet his standards and suggested looking for someone else instead. Choa stepped forward with a calm voice to explain that the monsters here were just like Takeru, and while she knew he could beat them, she worried his magic might run out too soon. But Itsuki turned to her with a small, confident smile to tell her not to worry because he would be fine. Hearing those words, Choa's face instantly turned red as she snapped that she wasn't worried, only mentioning her father's anger in case she died, before turning away to tend to the wounded and telling him to do whatever he liked. Before she went, she fixed her glasses, gave one last warning that the Stone Tribe was mindless but moved in packs, and told him to save his magic. Itsuhi walked up to the glowing door, raised his hand, and after a soft beep, the system gave him the green light to enter as an awakened Tenma. Once inside, Itsuki scanned the area with sharp eyes and muttered that there were far more enemies than he had expected. Right before him, a sea of stone beasts with glowing yellow eyes filled the rocky canyon, crushing the ground as they charged, and Itsuki realized these powerful creatures had grown so strong they now had levels and stats far beyond what he'd seen before. A blue window popped up before him, revealing that the level 9 stone statue's special gift was to turn all magic power into a shield. As a stone beast charged at him, Itsuki calmly held out his glowing purple orb to test if the creature met its special condition. As he activated the orb, its purple aura exploded outward, filling the air with swirling layers of bright violet and blue light. The giant stone monster crashed through the dust, but Itsuki raised his hand and fired a swirling purple ball of light right at it. The orb fired out and punched right through the beast's hard shell, leaving a big hole that let Itsuki step through the fading purple light, just as his system window popped up. The screen flashed with a victory message for the stone statue at level 9, then immediately announced that the clear orb's flight speed had doubled by a full 100%. Itsuki stared at the message, gave a small nod, and thought to himself that everything had turned out just as he had guessed. More stone monsters began roaring as they burst out from the broken cliff with bright yellow eyes, appearing right before him. With purple light dancing across his calm silhouette and lightning crackling around him, Itsuki's eyes turned red as he pointed out that these slow, hard-to-hit beasts were the perfect meal for the clear orb. The system windows kept popping up one after another as the stone statue at level 9 fell, and the clear orb's flight speed shot up by a full 100%. Shards of broken stone lay scattered on the ground while loud notifications buzzed all around. With a glowing window floating above, Itsuki showing 110 magic points left out of 260. He stood atop a mountain of shattered stone beasts and calmly realized that since the clear orb cost 50 points, he only had 2 more uses remaining. With the ground shaking beneath him, 2 giant stone beasts lunged at him, leaving only 3 foes to fight, including a boss still hiding in the dark, and he knew exactly what he had to do. He realized he had to use one glowing orb to knock down 2 enemies at the same time, so he dropped his guard and pulled the swirling purple power into his hands. With a mighty leap, Itsuki soared into the air just as the beast slammed down, shattering the rock and sending a cloud of dust and stone flying everywhere. Itsuki jumped forward, shouting now, as he dashed right through the pile of broken stuff. Right away, glowing system windows popped up one by one to show that a level 9 stone statue had been defeated, and the clear orb's flight speed instantly jumped by 100%. After the crash, Itsuki hit the rocky floor hard, gasping for air as sweat rolled down his face. Wishing for a magic recovery skill to end the rough exhaustion he felt just as his power ran dry. He sat up slowly to stare at the glowing screen, where the system revealed his clear orb skill, now flying at 5 meters per second to catch up to running foes, firing a perfect sphere that ignores defense and gains massive speed boosts every time he defeats a tougher enemy. Just as he was looking over the details, the earth suddenly shuddered and a huge stone arm crashed down on him. Itsuki gasped as the giant shape hit the ground, kicking up a huge cloud of dust and flying rocks. A huge stone giant charged forward, shaking the ground and kicking up dust, while a system window popped up to reveal its name, Giant Stoneman 2008, and show that its special power turns all magic into armor with a very high defense score. As Itsuki gazed up in shock at the massive creature, lightning surged through him, unlocking his new Thunderbreaker ability and boosting his speed by 50%. Blue electricity crackled around him as he sprinted toward the giant, wondering if one perfect shot from his orb could knock out the massive monster looming above. He looked up at the stone giants,